Kesubos Daf Chavches. Rabbi Zechariah ben Akatzav swore that during the Churban he did not leave his wife alone from the time the Romans entered Yerushalayim until they left. Despite this, the Chachamim prohibited her because Eida the maid al atzmo. One cannot testify about himself, and testimony about one's wife is like testimony about oneself because of Ishto Kegufo. They continue to live in the same courtyard, cautious never to be alone. Question: is the law of a Kohen and Yisrael's divorcee similar to that of a captive woman? The answer: a Brisa states that a Yisrael's divorcee cannot dwell in the same neighborhood as her husband. A Kohen's divorcee cannot dwell in the same mavui. Question: what is the difference between a neighborhood and a mavui? The answer: according to Tosfos, a neighborhood consists of 3 houses. It suffices for Yisrael to be separated from his divorcee, even if she remarried, at least 3 houses, whereas a Kohen's divorcee, not remarried, cannot dwell in a courtyard that uses the same mavui as her husband because he is prohibited to cohabit with her. Once remarried, they require only the distance of 3 houses. However, in a place like a small village where people do not travel, they cannot dwell there together, even if she is married. Tosfos understands that generally more caution is required for an unmarried woman when adultery is not an issue. According to the Rush, a neighborhood is larger than a mavui. A Kohen's divorcee cannot use the same mavui, whereas a Yisrael's divorcee remarried cannot dwell in his neighborhood or in a small village where he lives. The Chachamim required greater caution when adultery is an issue. Therefore, if she is single, the Rambam holds she is prohibited to dwell only in the same courtyard. The Ran holds that she is not prohibited. A Brisa states she has to move unless the house in the courtyard belongs to her. Question: what if they both own a house in the courtyard? The answer: a Brisa brings a verse, metaltelecha taltela gever, indicating it is easier for a woman to move than a man. A Brisa states that any debt a divorcee has to collect from her former Kohen husband, even her ksuba, must be collected through an agent. If they show up together in court, the judges do not deal with their case. According to Reb Papa and Reb Huna Brei Reb Yeshua, they excommunicate and administer to them lashes. Others hold these chachamim dispute their punishment. Reb Nachman holds an agent is only necessary if they divorce from nisuin, but not from erisin, since ein libo gaspa. But if they show signs of familiarity, not being shy with one another, even divorced from erisin, she must collect only by way of an agent. Mishnah: an adult can testify about certain things he witnessed as a child. He can testify that he recognizes his father's, teacher's, and brother's signatures. Also, he can testify he saw a bride leave her father's house with a veil and her hair out, sign she was a virgin, entitling her to a ksuba of 200 zuz. Since these testimonies require 2 witnesses, his testimony is accepted only with another adult. Also, he can testify his schoolmate immersed to eat rabbinic truma, such as vegetables and fruits, other than the 5 grains, wine, olive oil, or tithes from other lands next to Eretz Yisrael, or testify he collected truma with him at the granary. He can identify a beis hapras, a plowed over field of bone fragments from a grave, and a tchum Shabbos, a boundary for how far one may walk from his house on Shabbos. Since one witness suffices for these testimonies, his testimony from what he witnessed as a child suffices. However, he is not believed to testify about one who contributed right of way in his property, eulogizing or halting a funeral procession. A son is believed to identify his father's signature because they generally spend a lot of time together. His teacher is because he admired him, attempting to emulate him in all ways. Although neither reason applies to his brother, the Chachamim accepted certification of his signature. Similarly, according to the Ritva, he could certify any signature. The Rush limited it to his brothers. He can testify that a bride is a virgin because his testimony only reveals what the court already knows by way of a rov. A majority of women marry as virgins. Question: perhaps a schoolmate who immersed to eat truma was a slave of a Kohen. The answer: this Mishnah supports the teaching Rav Huna Brei Rabbi Yeshua that one prohibited to teach a slave Torah for fear he would be treated as a Jew, allowed to marry a Jewess. This would not result from a slave reading the Torah publicly because he was not treated as a father treats a son. Question: the Mishnah states that as an adult, one testified that as a child he remembered a certain person receiving truma with him at the granary. Perhaps that person was a slave of a Kohen. The answer: our Mishnah follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that the granaries could not distribute to a slave without his master because he elevated one who received truma to genealogically fit. Therefore, he had to be a Kohen. The Chachamim relied on the testimony of a miner that a certain field was a Beis HaPras because Tumah is midrabanan, from bone fragments uncovered by plowing. One can crawl through it by blowing or walk through it if trampled by others, pulverizing any fragments the size of a barley grain. Also, his testimony about Chum Shabbos is relied upon because it is a rabbinic restriction. However, testimony that the court relies upon it to exact another's property, such as one used for a standing and eulogizing spot during a funeral procession, is not believed. The Gemara adds other testimonies from things he remembers as a child. He is believed to testify that he transported challah or kohanic gifts to a particular person so long as he brought it himself. However, a convert or a slave, according to one opinion, are not believed about things they witnessed before their conversion or freedom because their testimony was not considered precise, whereas Rabbi Yochanan Broka held their testimony could be relied upon once a Gentile intended to convert and the slave knew he would be freed.